Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and this is my weekly vlog number 143 for Monday, November the 25th, 2019. 1 month from today is Christmas Day. Christmas, bah, humbug. Maybe I'll say more about that in another video. Anyways, you saw my little teaser at the beginning. It was the weekend of our quilt show, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But let's take a look at my current project. I'm still working on Christmas items. I'm starting to get a little panicked that I'm not going to get these things all done before I need to have them done, but I'm pressing on, and this is one of the projects I finally finished. This is my gingerbread house. And it's done in the same manner as the snowman that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. And this one has a spot in the bottom where I can put in a little electric LED light to light it up. I'm really pleased with this. It took quite a while to make. It is an in-the-hoop embroidery design, just like the snowman was. And yeah, it came out really great, I think. And the other thing about this too is putting it together was much easier using the hemostats, which I explained what those were a couple of videos ago. That really worked well. So yeah, I'm really pleased with the way this turned out, and it's going to look great as a Christmas decoration. Speaking of embroidering in the hoop, Walter has just bought himself an embroidery machine, so we will have two in the house. Now, the one he bought is not quite as sophisticated as my machine. His is a dedicated embroidery machine, which means that it doesn't sew, you only embroider in it. But I think he's getting kind of excited. He gets it later this week, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of fun with it. And Walter's very creative anyway, so I'm sure he will be able to make all kinds of beautiful things. And I'll show you what he makes once he gets them made. Okay, so let's move right into the YouTube channel of the week. This is a YouTube channel that is about quilting, about long arm quilting. But the lady who runs this channel is local. I have met her. Her name is Tracy. She lives in the town, well, her shop is in the town next door to mine, and it's where I go to long arm my quilts. And I took some classes with her. So here, check her out. The YouTube channel of the week is Whirlsnswirlsquilting. And this is a lady that I have met and taken several courses with on how to do long arm free motion quilting techniques. Her videos are very fun to watch. Her designs are amazing, and her instruction is very clear and very organized. I highly recommend this if you're starting out in long arm quilting. But here's a little bit of a switch. Although I'm featuring this as a quilting YouTube channel, you can get ideas looking at her designs for doing things like Zantangles or just doodling on your scrapbook pages and other mixed media projects. So this is thinking outside of the box. And although this YouTube channel is based for quilters, think a little bit further. Think about how you could apply some of her designs into your own crafting. And the links are down below for that YouTube channel, as is the links to my blog and to Stephen and Walter Live. And this week on Stephen and Walter Live, we did our next part in our talking about the people who watch us on a regular basis, asking some questions. And our questions in the past, yesterday on the live, were about travel, and specifically whether or not any of these people have ever been to Canada. And it surprised me that some of the American people that live relatively close to our border had really never been to our country. So check that out. I'm still not finished with the interviews with the people that watch us on a regular basis. I still have a few more questions to ask, so we will be continuing that on Stephen and Walter Live this coming Sunday. And just while I think of it now, we will be on 1 hour later this coming Sunday because it's the first Sunday of the month, and it is December the 1st, so it kind of creeped up on us pretty quick. But that's when I do my art journaling class. So I'll be home a little later, so that means that instead of at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Stephen and Walter Live will be on at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you can join us for the conversation. And I also have this week's book, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, listed in the show notes below as well. So that takes us to what's pissing me off this week. Okay, I don't want to get into what started this in too much detail, but let's just say I had a misunderstanding with somebody, and that person had one version of the story, I had another version of the story, and some demands were made upon me. And I did follow through with the demands. Quite frankly, what this person was complaining about was very, very minor. This person was making a mountain out of a molehill, and also would not understand the fact that I honestly and truly did not do anything against their wishes. That was not my intention. They were saying I was being disrespectful. Never my intention to be so. I just honestly and truly misunderstand some instructions that they had given me. But this opened up a can of worms, and it did get me very hot and bothered, and I did address the issue. I corrected the problem, even though as far as I'm concerned, there wasn't a problem at all. But to appease the individual who thought there was, I went ahead and did what they wanted me to do. It was the way they addressed the issue that really bothered me. Now, I'm going to back up here for just a second. I know what it's like to be in a leadership role, okay? I was a department head for 16 years, and before that I was an assistant department head. So I have experience working with people at various levels of power, for lack of a better word. And in a role, in a position of a certain amount of power that I played when I was a department head, I learned very quickly that there are some things you can do and some things you can't do. And there's ways to get people to do what you want them to do without, being demanding and forceful and trying to pull the power card. Apparently, the people I was dealing with in this situation have never learned that. There were demands made, and I took exception to them. First of all, if you want to get somebody to do something for you, the worst thing you can possibly do, in my opinion, is go in and tell them this is what they're going to do. Even if you are their boss, say in the corporate world, you get more action from people, I think, if you're diplomatic about the way you want to get things done. Yes, you have a role to play if you're their boss, if you are in a position of power, but it doesn't mean you have to crush those that are under you, okay? There are ways to get people to do things, as I've said, in a diplomatic way, without hurting feelings, for the most part. Sometimes it can't be helped, but for the most part. Volunteer organizations are another story. I've been involved with many volunteer organizations. The name volunteer, the title volunteer, means that you are doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Nobody's paying you. You don't have to do it. You're doing it because you believe something needs to be done and you have volunteered to do it for whatever reason. Well, this one individual is the leader of the organization and put a lot of demands on me over this situation, and basically gave me a bulleted list of demands. The tone was threatening. The tone was accusatory. Is that a word? Accusatory? Accusative? Maybe it's accusative. I don't know. Anyways, was blaming me for all kinds of things, and basically was escalating a situation that it could have been really handled very simply. In fact, this person didn't even need to be involved in the situation, but the other person who initiated it decided that instead of sending me an email or a message or whatever on a personal level, one-on-one, they would go over my head, or what they thought was over my head. I find that people that are in charge of volunteer organizations often get a very diluted sense of who they are in terms of their power over other people. If anything, you need to learn the language of diplomacy. You need to learn how to get people to do things without insulting them, without putting demands on them, and making them feel like they're worthless. Because it is a volunteer organization. You can volunteer, you can unvolunteer. And I essentially addressed that issue in my correspondence with this individual. I was pissed. Don't treat me like I'm an inferior. This organization is built upon the grounds of working as a team. No one member of the team is more powerful than another member of the team. People have specific jobs, specific roles, specific positions in order to do these jobs, but that does not put them in a position where they can make demands and make you feel like crap. And that's what this individual did. Now, I addressed my concerns. Actually, I wrote 2 emails to this person. First one I did not send. Never send an email when you're angry. Oh, I was angry. I was so angry, I was actually shaking. And I wrote the email, but I read it to Walter. And good thing that I'm an emotional person, okay? I will admit that. I can fly off the handle at times, and I know that about myself, and I try to control it. Luckily, I have Walter, who kind of reins me in situations like this. So I read it to Walter first, and he suggested that that not be sent, that I rethink it. And at first, I was thinking, look, I'm getting no support here, blah, 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 poor me, poor me, poor me. But I cooled down. I rewrote it. Good thing. I think I wrote it in a very diplomatic but firm manner. I addressed each of the issues that the individual had put into this particular email, and I pointed out firmly that I didn't appreciate the way they had phrased things. And in fact, what I did was I took specific parts of their demands and rephrased them in the way that, well, basically I think it should have been worded. So, it wouldn't make the situation worse, but possibly would get the end result that they were trying to achieve. I also brought up some other issues because there were other issues with this individual. I have never had a reply to the email. However, I was in contact with this particular person over the weekend, and at first I got the cold shoulder, which I expected. And then as time went on, and maybe this person, and this is just me interpreting it, I have no idea how they felt, but maybe what I said sunk in. Because this person turned around and was quite pleasant to work with over the weekend, and when we came into contact, we were both pleasant to each other. I'm not going to hold a grudge against this person. I'm going to put it down to the fact that this individual may, when they in their own job, may be in a position of power, and are used to, handling very severe situations. This was not a severe situation by any manner, any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Maybe this person thought more about it and thought about what I said. I don't know. That's the way I choose to look at it, and has decided, let's leave it, which is fine by me. Because why carry on and on? They told me what they wanted. I told them what I could do for them, and I addressed the issues I had with that individual. And I would say that it's over with, and I hope it is. Because if this individual decides to bring this up again or reopen the issue, I might not be as diplomatic this time as I was, or at least the way I think I was. Okay? Now, the other individual that initiated that, well, she's just a bitch. Oops. Sorry. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about it. I think in that you probably get the idea of how I feel about this person, and yeah. And I ran into this person too on the weekend as well. And this person decided not to give me the time of day. Looked away, looked through me, the whole bit. And that's fine. We're not friends to start with, and we're certainly not friends now. I did address this person, again, in as diplomatic a way as I could, but I did state that I didn't think this person should have gone over my head, that this was an easy situation to have solved, and it was a misunderstanding. This person doesn't feel it was a misunderstanding. Fine. Obviously, I'm not going to change that person's mind, and this is where we stand. But I'm not going to lose sleep over it because, quite frankly, this person's not worth it as far as I'm concerned. So be it. So anyways, my whole point of this is little people with little power, but they think they have power. And if you think about it on the bigger scale, do any of us have any power? Is power just a delusion or illusion? Well, it could be both, I suppose. I mean, I think we delude ourselves when we get into positions of responsibility, thinking that we're on the up and up, going up that ladder, and we have all this power and we can change things in the world and the whole bit. Get over yourself is what I say. I figured that out after I retired. You want to know something? I was a teacher for 31 years. I was a department head for 16 of those years. I worked hard. I loved my job. I hobnobbed it with other people that had more power than me and the whole bit. And yes, I can see how you can get a false sense that you have some sort of control over things and that people answer to you. Then you retire and nobody cares. You no longer have that position of power. And in the big scheme of things, the role I played as a department head has no effect beyond my department. In the big world scheme of things, it doesn't start or stop wars. It doesn't solve world hunger. It doesn't affect the world economy. It doesn't bring about world peace. I'm powerless, really. And I think when people figure this out, and I don't mean to think that there isn't something you can't do to change certain situations. That's not the kind of powerlessness I'm talking about. Like, don't go into despair because you can't change anything. What's your point here on life? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is nobody cares what position you held when you were working or what organization you were with, because it doesn't affect the world. The only people that affect the world are people like the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada, the leaders of the world. And even they come and they go with time as well. I mean, can you think about your last leader, what they did and what they didn't do? And do you care anymore? I mean, you might have some nostalgic thoughts about it or some hateful thoughts about those the past, but that's the past. It's over. Moving on to the future. So a lot of times people who get positions that they consider to have titles, you know, the president of this, the chairman of this, or whatever, in volunteer organizations, let that power go to their head, and they think they have people working for them. And what I said in my email to this one individual is, I volunteered for this position. I can unvolunteer. You are not my boss. You are not paying me. I can walk away. Simple as that. So I guess I was taking back my own power in this situation, the power of being able to control my destiny. And that's probably the only power any of us really have, is the power to control our own destinies. Now, some people take on that role, some people don't and would rather blame everybody else and world affairs for why their life sucks. I choose to control my own destiny. So anyways, yeah, I think they call this, when I called it the little people with little power, I think that's the Napoleon complex, if you know what that is. So we'll see. Down the road, I'm hoping this is the end of the situation. It has been resolved. We move on. But as I said, if it comes back to haunt me, then I'll have to deal with it then. And I don't know if I'll be as nice this time. But let's just leave it. Okay, moving on. So, new products. Well, I don't really have any new products, but I bought some fabric that's kind of interesting. You know that I collected fabric when I was in Australia to make my Australian quilt, which, yeah, I haven't got around to that yet. But there was a booth, one of the vendors at the quilt show that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, that from my guild that happened on the weekend, was selling some Japanese and Australian fabrics. Well, specifically, they didn't have any Australian fabrics left, but they had New Zealand fabrics, and they had Tasmanian fabrics. Now, Tasmania is part of Australia, of course, so I guess in a sense it's Australian fabrics. So I bought some batiks, and these are Tasmanian batiks, and they weren't a bad price. So I bought 2 fat quarters of 3 colors in here, and they've got that Australian flavor. That's what I was looking for, but they feel a little funny. They're 100% cotton. It says so on them, but they're coarser. They're coarser than the cotton I've bought in other places, but that's not a problem. It's just the way they are. It might be the process in how they colorize them, whatever. I don't know. But anyways, I've got a few more here for my collection, which will eventually go into my Australian quilt. And that is pretty much all I bought. I was on the door all weekend, so I didn't have a lot of time to check out the vendors, and more about that in a minute. So yeah, that's the only thing new I've got this week, sorry. Book reviews. Okay. This is for the card makers out there. This is an old book. It's from my stash. It's called Making Cards in a Weekend. And by Jane Suckling. Yep, Jane Suckling. There's a name for you. And of course, it's got all kinds of ideas for making cards. And if you're a card maker, you might enjoy this. And it's probably be a source of inspiration for you as well. There's some very unusual cards like these ones right here. She's very detailed in telling you what supplies you need and how to do it, and different techniques, quite a few different techniques. And again, I really love books that inspire me in one technique or in one creation process, like making card making, but that can be what I call transferred to other types of art, like mixed media. So a lot of the techniques that are in this book, you could apply to your mixed media projects as well. Now, cost-wise, it cost me $23.99 Canadian, and I went looking for it, and I did find it on Amazon.ca for $6.85 Canadian. There is a charge for shipping, however, of $3.99, but basically that puts it at about $11. So, you know, a little less than half the cost of the original book. So I've put the link for this in the show notes below if you're kind of interested in it, but it is a good book. Okay, what are we moving on to next? Okay, so I'm going to continue with the next installment of the iCraft invitation scrapbook I've been working on, and in this part I'm applying the background papers. So now I have finished putting all my background papers onto the invitation scrapbook album, and I want to show you the cardstock that I used for this. It's one I've had for a very long time. It's called I don't know what it's called. It's by a company called Momenta. It just says cardstock, and it had quite a variety of papers that are very nice. I've had this for many years, and I've never cracked it open until now. But this is the paper series that I used. So here's the album with all the background papers. Now, I didn't take any time or do any video showing you how I glued these down and cut them out, because I think that's pretty much a known method. I did use my Cricut again to format the sizes of the page coverings that I needed, and stuck them all down with double-sided tape. And I also went around the edges with some ink. I used sort of a vintage yellowy color, just very subtle, and I'll show you what it looks like inside. Now, one thing I don't like about this album is this band that they have to hold it all together, and I may change that later on when I do the final embellishing. I might do it more of as a ribbon kind of thing, because I just don't like the way it sits. So let's slip this off, and you can see that
I did do the craft cardstock when I first put this album together in the last segment, but I went over to the black one because I just like the looks of the black around the pages better. So here they all are, and very straightforward. As I said, I use double-sided tape to stick these down. You could use wet glue. Wet glue will give you a little bit more wiggle time, but I use the double-sided tape, and yeah, I like using a paper collection because all the papers coordinate, so I don't really have to think about it. But here's what the final result is. Now, there's lots of room on here for embellishing and for adding some pockets and little mini albums that could be tucked inside here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I'll have to look at it, think about it, look in my stash and see what I have, and then go from there. And that will be in the next section of this video. So stay tuned for that.
So next week we'll be looking at embellishing it. All right, so what's coming, or what's the events in the past week? Update on my mother. She's fine, but she was complaining about her feet. I talked to her yesterday. She got new shoes. My sister went out and got her new shoes, Skechers. They're slip-ons. They're, you know, kind of a form of a tennis shoe. She likes those kind. So my sister went out and got her a pair, and now she's saying that her toes are rubbing in them, and it's causing them, actually, I think she's getting some abrasion on her toes. Now, my mother has bad feet. She has hammer toe. Okay, so I don't know if you know what that is, but basically her toes kind of all, you know, fold up on top of each other. She blames it on pointy high heels that she wore back in the 50s and 60s. And you know, the shoes in those days, for women's shoes, had heels as high, and a lot of them ran to a point. Our feet aren't triangular shapes, so I don't know how women manage to walk in those. And I have heard that those type of shoes have caused a lot of ladies a lot of problems over the years with their feet. Well, my mother's one of those. So I guess the nursing staff are suggesting that maybe, you know, it might help if she had a size bigger. So I contacted my sister, and she's going to go out this week and get my mother another pair of these shoes, but one size bigger. Now, here's the ironic part of this whole thing, however. My mother can't walk. So how is it that her shoes are rubbing on her feet? Her feet don't go anywhere. Now, Walter says, though, that because she doesn't walk, the shoes they haven't stretched out yet, which might be causing a problem with it. And that may be so. Of course, my mother likes to complain about a lot of things, and she usually finds something to complain about, and then when I solve that problem, she moves on to the next thing to complain about. But, I mean, if this is giving her discomfort, then I don't want that. So we'll bite the bullet and go out, because these shoes are not cheap, okay? I mean, she is paying for them, but I watch her money, and you know, she's not a rich lady, okay? She's comfortable, but she's not rich. So, you know, don't spend money that we don't need to spend, kind of a thing. But my sister's going out, as I said, she's getting her a new pair, and we'll see how those work out. I suspect that this won't solve the problem. I did suggest her slippers. You know, some slippers. Since she's not up and walking around anyways, why not? Because they have a little bit more room in them, you know, that kind of thing. Well, the answer to that was, no, I don't want a pair of slippers. I'll look like an old lady. You are an old lady. Okay, so that's off the table. So we'll see how this works out, and hopefully it'll be better for her. Because I don't know what I'm going to do after that. If this doesn't help, I guess I'll just have to talk to the nursing staff and see what other things they can recommend, because I'm sure they've seen this problem before. So that's my mother. The Guild Show. Okay, I do have a video clip to insert here in a second that shows you all the quilts in the quilt show. It was a great quilt show. I was impressed, and I'm not impressed just because it was my guild. Yeah, I've only really been to about 2 quilt shows since I started quilting, and I have to say, yeah, we knocked ourselves out on this one. And a lot of people coming through the quilt show said the same thing to us, that they thought it was very well organized and they thought the quilts were beautiful and nicely laid out and the whole bit. Now, there's a lot of work that goes into a quilt show. They've been working for a year, the committee, on this. And then I was there and Walter was there and lots of other people there putting them all up. We had 188 quilts to put on display. Luckily, the lady who set this all up in terms of layout, she knew the dimensions of all the quilts, because when we submitted the quilts and we submitted a form to register the quilt online weeks before, we had to put in the dimensions, which at the time I didn't understand why we had to put in the dimensions of the quilt, but it was clear to me when we started putting them up. She had it all mapped out. She knew exactly the sizes of the frames that were going to hold the quilts, where they were going to go in the layout, and she had it all planned out, and it went up. 188 quilts were finished being hung up within about 2.5 hours. And that's a new record according to people who had been involved with the Guild's quilt shows before. They said the last show, they were there till midnight and started in the morning getting up all the quilts. So she did a lot of hard work, a lot of thinking about this, and had it all laid out. And yep, it went up very smoothly. Couple of snags along the way, but she's the kind of person that when a problem arises, she just deals with it, and very efficiently, and doesn't get too uptight and upset, and it all worked out. We had a lot of vendors there as well, lots of stuff for sale. We had a tea room, we had a boutique table, we had what we call the treasure chest table, which you might know better as a white elephant table, but where, you know, people bring in gently used things. That's the term they use for all used things now, gently used. And, you know, that people could buy. So books and fabric and stuff like that. So overall, it was a great success. I spent the whole weekend, the 2 days of the quilt show at the door, the admission door, and it was funny the reactions I'd get, because I mean, it's a quilt show, so 99% of the people coming to it are ladies. First thing is, they'd see me and another lady sitting at the admission to take their $7 to get in kind of thing. They would immediately go to her. Even if she was busy with somebody else and I was not, they'd immediately go to her. And I'd say, hi, I can help you here. And or someone would walk in and they'd see a man sitting there, and there was like deer in headlights, like, ah, there's a man, there's a man. And I'd see the deer in headlights and I'd say, yep, I'm a man. I'm the only male member of the guild. 100 ladies and me. Okay? But I'm looking to recruit. And if they had their husband there, I'd say, ever thought about quilting? I didn't get any takers. The other thing that was actually, we had a few people get a little indignant. On our sign with the admission, children under 12 free, men free. Well, I had one lady say, well, that's sexist. Why are men free? And I said, because the men brought you here to it. You sucked them into driving you to this event, and you'll probably suck them into carrying all your parcels out as well, and they're probably bored. So I said, it's our little reward for the pain they're going through. I usually shut them up. And sometimes I just make jokes on them. They go, men are free? I said, yeah, so when you get inside, pick out something nice for yourself. And then they think about it for a minute and kind of laugh. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working at the door, you know, because I met a lot of people, and that's kind of my strength. It comes from my years of standing up in front of kids in school and meetings and things. I don't have any problem with, you know, carrying on a little bit of friendly banter and welcoming people and all that kind of stuff to something like this. So that's what I did all weekend long. Now, I was sore when I got home and tired. Now you'd say, why you were sore? You were sitting all the time. That was the problem. I was sitting all the time, and I should have got up more often and had a little, you know, break or walk around. But, you know, we were steadily busy. We had over, I would say, by my guesstimate, over 800 people come to the quilt show across the 2 days. And that is really good, because the one thing about this quilt show is it's a fundraiser. It's a fundraiser for us, our guild. we don't get government grants or anything like that. We have to rely upon the annual fee we charge members, which is $40 a person. And we need the money for operating expenses. We rent a hall. It's actually a church. So that costs money. That's for our regular meetings. And there's all kinds of other expenses that go into it. We have to have insurance and stuff like that. So we only put one of these shows on every third year. So this is the money we need for the next 3 years to keep the guild afloat. Plus, we had to rent a hall, and this is a fairly expensive hall because you need a big one, and it's one of the few in our area that's big enough to accommodate this kind of show. And I have no idea how much that hall costs, but I know it's not particularly cheap. There's operating costs for running the show as well. So, we recoup the money from the admission at the door, and we recoup the money from what we sell in our own boutique and treasure chest part, and also what we charge the vendors for setting up their stalls. And I have no idea how much we charge vendors. I may know that once the executive meets again, and we go over the reports from each of the committee heads for this. So anyways, I think it was very much a success. And we'd have a few people that were rather surprised we were charging admission. One lady seemed a little indignant. She walked in and goes, "What? There's a charge?" Turned around, walked right back out. Well, I don't know what she thought. I mean, anything that I've ever been to that's a craft show or anything like that, there's usually an admission charge as well. And come on, $7 won't make or break anybody, really. I don't know, pretend you're a man and we'll let you in for free, kind of a thing. I had a few in there and said, "Oh, I'm a man. Come in." And I says, "Well, you realize I will have to do a check for that. Do you want to go that route, or would you rather just pay the $7? Again, I was trying to be funny. And for the most part, people seemed to take it in the humor it was given to as well. Of course, you get some people who come to these things and they have to give you their life story while you're trying to get them the ticket and get them in. And you've got line up behind them. You don't want to be rude and cut them off, but some of them are oblivious that there might be people behind them, that this may not be the time and the place to tell me your life story. I had one lady come in. She comes in. She's all flustered. "Okay, my mother is coming. She has a walker. Okay, and her friend from England is coming with her as well. Now, they'll be here in a few minutes, but I had to come in because I need to use the washroom and get all this." And she's like doing the little pee-pee dance kind of a thing. And I could see that. And she's telling me all this stuff. Now, when she comes in, I'm paying for them. But so don't take any money from her if she comes in. And I'll be right back out. "Okay," I said to her, "Okay, the washroom's there. Why don't you go in there and get your business done? And when these people come in, I don't know who they are, but I'll look for somebody in a walker kind of a thing. I'll just hold them here at the door and let them know you're just in the washroom." Well, it all worked out fine, but she comes back out, and then I hear about her medical history. Now, this poor lady had Crohn's disease, okay? And she says to me, "I may need to use the bathroom again." And I said, "That's absolutely free. It's right there by all means. Don't worry about it." But it was like, how does this affect my life? I'm just selling tickets, okay? I don't need the whole story here, the whatever you want to say about it. I had I think the guy was bored. He's waiting for his wife. And so he sort of gravitated towards me. I'm trying to sell tickets at the door, take the money for it. He's telling me life story about his wife's long arm that was like 35 years old, and how it was kind of interesting to listen to him. But my attention is divided. I'm trying to do my job at the door, and at the same time not really be rude to this gentleman. And he's kind of oblivious to the fact that I am working here, okay, kind of a deal. But anyways, that was what made everything interesting that day. And as I said, I think it was a great success. So I'm going to insert here a clip of all the quilts. Now, if this is not your cup of tea, just fast forward through the video. Now, if you're wondering, did I have quilts in the show? Yes, I had 5 of them in the show. Did I win a ribbon? No. And that's okay. It would have been nice, it would have been great for my ego, but look, I've only been doing this for just 2 years, so I have lots more to learn. And the quilts that did win, they deserved it. Oh, the one that won the top prize, that was an incredible quilt. And I never got a chance to actually take a still picture of it to insert it here. And I'm not even sure where it is on the video, but it was an incredible quilt. And the challenge quilt, the one with the butterflies on it that I showed you, months ago, that we had to design if we want to go into this and use specific fabric. When we were hanging up the quilts, one of the ladies I was working with showed me her challenge quilt when it went up. Yeah, I said to her, you're winning the prize for this, because it was incredible. She had done an applique version in caricature of her and her friends at a quilting bee or a quilting retreat kind of a thing with the fabric and everything in it. It was very creative, fun to look at. She'd even made 3-dimensional elements. She had earrings on each of the ladies that she had appliqued onto that were made from sewing notions, like bobbin cases and things like that. It was just wonderful. So yeah, I didn't win a prize for that, but she deserved to win the prize. So, there's always other times with it too. And I'm not in it for the prizes, although a ribbon would have been nice. But anyways, it's just an ego thing. Okay, so it was a great success. So what's coming up? I have no idea. I don't have any major events in the next week coming up, with the exception of like my sewing classes. I do have the yearly review at the nursing home about my mother. My sister and Walter, of course, will be there for that. And really, this is something they do every year to make sure, if there's any concerns about anything. The only concern I have is, where are my mother's bras going? And I've talked about that before too. So anyways, yeah, there's nothing. Next weekend as well, I have the art journaling class coming up. And I'm going to show them how to make some Christmas stars, which basically I made out of fabric, but I've adapted them to paper. And let me see, where did I put it? Let me just show it to you really quickly here. I had to take off my microphone. Okay, here we go. So these are just made from strips of cardstock, of scrapbooking paper. I used some Christmassy type and just went in my stash and found a couple of elements and layered them onto them and added a little bit of Winkestella to give it a glow. But I'm going to show the ladies how to make these in my art journaling class, and they can use their mixed media supplies and things to make their own unique little Christmas tree ornaments, or they'd be nice on a gift. And they're really easy. And what I'm thinking right now out loud is that I should probably do a tutorial on how I made these and post that. So if I get a chance, 1,000 other things to do, I will try and do that at some point in time. Okay, so I think that's about it for me. Yeah, nothing else to tell you. So just a reminder, Stephen and Walter Live will be on this Sunday at 5, not 4, but at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to continue our interview with the viewers. And if you're somebody that's one of my lurkers, because there are lurkers, and that's fine, you can enter into the conversation too. We won't bite off your head. More the merrier. So I hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.